The race for the White House is about to kick into overdrive. The Republican National Convention begins Monday in Tampa, Florida, followed the week after by the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina. Both campaigns will be putting on a big show to drive their messages home to voters, especially those in critical battleground states. It takes 270 electoral votes to win. The CBS News election team estimates that 237 are leaning towards President Obama, while 206 are likely to go to Mitt Romney. That leaves 95 electoral votes up for grabs in 8 swing states. More than half of those votes are in Florida, Ohio, and Wisconsin. A new Quinipiac CBS News New York Times poll is showing what those states look like right now. Joining us from Washington is Leigh Ann Caldwell, political reporter for CBSNews.com. Leigh Ann, good morning to you.
Good morning, Terrell.
Let's take a look at these poll numbers. Right now, President Obama, according to this poll, leading in these 3 states. In Florida, Obama leading right now 49 to 46. In Ohio, the president has the biggest lead, 50 to 44%. And in Wisconsin, Romney is only 2 points behind, 47 to the president's 49. The bigger headline, though, may be Mitt Romney making some ground here, gaining some big ground within the margin of error in Florida and Wisconsin. How did he get so tight?
Well, one thing that's so interesting about these polls, which the Mitt Romney campaign must be pretty pleased with because he is gaining ground in those 2 very important states. But in Wisconsin, remember, his new vice presidential candidate, Paul Ryan, it hails from that state. And in the poll, it showed that 31% of voters said that they would be more likely to vote for Mitt Romney because of Paul Ryan. And that gives Mitt Romney a huge boost. And Mitt Romney has shown gains, especially in Wisconsin, in the past few weeks.
So is it too soon to say, Leigh Ann, that maybe Paul Ryan could be the reason why Mitt Romney wins Wisconsin? Could this be something that plays in?
I think that it'll have a factor, but it's too soon to say if it's going to be the factor. Paul Ryan has only been on the campaign trail for about 2 weeks now. He's relatively untested on a national stage. A lot of eyes will be watching him at the convention next week, where he'll make his first really major national appearance. And then there's a couple months left of really heavy and hard campaigning after that. And so Paul Ryan is definitely going to be in the spotlight. And so we'll see how the campaign continues to play out, especially in Wisconsin, and if the rest of if the state does really appeal to him.
Now let's move a little next door here. We go to Ohio. The president has the biggest lead there, leading by 6 points over Mitt Romney. Why do the folks in Ohio, the voters there, like the president so much? Why does he do so well there?
Well, there is a relatively large labor contingency in Ohio, but Ohio was really affected by the auto bailout. And he goes to Ohio and he says, look, we saved Detroit, we saved Ohio, we saved your jobs by bailing out the American automakers. And that is really popular in Ohio. On the other hand, Mitt Romney, he had the opposite tact. He did not want the government to take any intervention. And so that really sticks in a state where the auto industry is pretty crucial.
What did we learn about the gender gap in this recent poll? Of course, the president seems to be polling well among women. Is that still the case?
It's still the case. The gap still persists. It was shrinking just slightly in some of the states, but the president still has a pretty wide margin among women. And what's interesting is this poll did not take into account the recent flap of Representative Todd Akin in Missouri, who's talked about forcible rape and that pregnancy rarely happens when there is forcible rape. And so it'll be really interesting to see how voters and women especially react to those comments and if that does have any impact on the presidential campaign.
Speaking of which, still getting reaction this morning from a public warning. This was issued by a Texas County judge, Tom Head. He said that a civil war could break out if President Obama is elected for a second term. In light of the comments from Congressman Todd Akin a little bit earlier on this week, do comments like this really affect voters? Could this hurt Republicans?
We'll see. I think that what this says is that there's still a lot of anti-Obama sentiment out there. Of course, it's a campaign year and emotions are running really high. But this sort of language echoes the height of the Tea Party in 2010, which was just getting started back then. And hearing this language, especially from an official, a judge, really shows that Obama is extremely unpopular in some parts of the country, especially parts of like West Texas, which are very Republican. And one thing, getting back to these polls that relate to this issue, that does show us is that there are a lot of people who are decided in many of these swing states and around the country. There's the polls showed in these swing states that 9 out of 10 voters had made up their mind, and so there's not a lot of wiggle room for these candidates. So it's not only going to be about persuading the undecideds, but also turning out the base. And so comments like that of the judge, it can cut both ways. It can turn out the most rabid anti-Obama opponents, or it can turn some of those more wishy-washy voters away from Mitt Romney.
Certainly getting into a critical time, that's for sure. Leigh Ann Caldwell, political reporter for CBSNews.com. Leigh Ann, thank you so much.
Thank you, Terrell.